If you're someone that suffers from PMDD or has very extreme PMS symptoms and don't actually know what PMDD is, you're going to want to listen to this video. As well as if you're someone that suffers from painful periods, I'm going to be talking about my experience with all of the above and what I have done over the years to figure out how best to manage all of these symptoms and issues, and how I'm now finally in a place where I have a hold on things. All of that is just down to trial and error, so I want to save you guys the time and the hassle and the stress and the pain and the torture and give you all the information that I have in this video. Now, if you guys have been here for a while, you will know that I actually have already made a video about my PMDD experience on my YouTube channel already, and I did that a couple of years ago now. Back then, PMDD was not spoken about, not nearly as much as it is now, and even nowadays it's not talked about that much, and it's not known about that much either. I think it's slowly becoming something that people are aware of, but back then nobody had a clue. So I was very scared of speaking about my experience, but I did. If you want to hear more about the context of my experience and me dealing with PMDD and kind of learning that I have it, definitely go and check that video out. This video is going to be more about what worked for me and what didn't, because I, over the last few years, have trialed and errored so many different things. Let me start with the painful period. The only thing that I will share that really didn't work for me, and this is both for the pain but also the PMDD, was going on the pill. That was definitely an option I discussed in my previous video a few years back, where that was something that I was maybe thinking about doing because I kind of just didn't know what else to do. And that's always the first option that's shoved in front of your face. Go on the pill, go on the pill. Whatever your issue is as a woman, go on the pill. That's meant to solve all your problems, apparently. And everyone's different again, so everyone reacts to things like that differently. And I was always very adamant that I didn't want to do something like that as like a quick fix, because I knew when there came a time where I didn't want to be on the pill anymore, or I couldn't be on it, then I would still have to deal with all the symptoms that I would normally deal with. I wanted to eradicate the issue. So I tried the pill. It really did not work for me. I actually only ended up trying it when I got diagnosed with PMDD, but that's something that I'll discuss in a little bit. But other things that I tried for my painful periods, I tried a TENS machine. So if you guys don't know what this is, it's basically this device, and it has like two, I'm not going to come at you with the technical terms today, just know that, because I don't know them. But I used this TENS machine. It was from a brand called Overa, I believe, but you can get them from lots of different brands. Like, there's a lot of different varieties of these, and for different things as well. Like, these aren't just only used for period pains, these are used for other pains as well. But it's a device that has these two sticky tabs that you stick to your like abdominal area, like wherever you get your cramps, and you can turn it on to a it has varying levels of intensity, and it basically shuts off, from what I understand, it shuts the nerve off. It stops the message being sent to your brain that you're in pain, kind of like a painkiller, but it actually was one of the most effective methods that I used. And this is something that I typically use during the night, because something that I really struggled with when I was in the era of having the most excruciating period pains is on the first day of my period, if I got my period in the night, I did not sleep throughout the entire night. So this was screwing me up for work. I could not function during the day. Sleep is the most important thing you need. And when you're unwell and your body is like going through all of that stress, and then you can't sleep and give it rest, it just makes everything worse and worse. So I used to use that machine when I was sleeping, because it's the only thing that would actually literally stop me feeling pain. It would literally like numb the pain. Like, I would be in agony 1 second with cramps, and then I turn that machine on, you can't feel the cramps anymore. And it is such a weird thing, and I don't fully understand the science behind it, and I would definitely recommend researching these things before you do them. I'm not recommending these specifically, I'm just sharing my experience and what has helped for me. But what I will say is I actually did stop using that machine. One, because it broke. That's probably the main reason I stopped using it, and it was very expensive, so I didn't end up like buying a new one. But it did break. It just stopped working on me for some reason, and it wouldn't charge. So that was a really gutting experience. But also, I think in hindsight that was a blessing in a way, because I noticed side effects I was getting from using that machine. I think I was using it for probably longer than I should have been. I think you're meant to only use it in 20-minute intervals, but I would use it throughout the night because I would fall asleep, and you're not also meant to sleep with them as well, I think. But that's like the only use I could get out of it, because I actually could sleep if I was using it. So I ended up also developing like twitches, so my nerves would twitch after I'd used it because I was using it for prolonged periods of time. So I would notice like these other like things in my body, and I just was getting discomfort, and I just wasn't like feeling great after using it. And I don't think there are like crazy adverse effects, side effects of using TENS machines. I think they generally are pretty safe. But I think because of the prolonged use and because of how intensely I had to use it, like I had to have it on the full setting, I was using it for a prolonged period of time, it just wasn't healthy. And that was the only way I could get it to be effective. Like I had to use it on the high setting, otherwise I could still feel the pain. So there was no point using it if I didn't. And then also I had to use it for that prolonged period of time because I was sleeping, and I obviously couldn't wake myself up every 20 minutes to turn it off or like take a break from it. So I did end up stopping using that. But I would say if you want to try a TENS machine, just do your research on them, if they are fit for use for you as an individual, depending on like your body and whatever issues that you might have health wise. But that's definitely something that did help me for a good amount of time, and that's like one of the first things that actually gave me effective pain relief. So I did really want to mention it in this video, even though it did give me like weird side effects afterwards, and it's not something that I use anymore. The classic that I always have used since the beginning is a hot water bottle, but one thing that has changed the game with my use of a hot water bottle is actually applying castor oil prior to applying the heat. So let me just give you a bit of a backstory. So when I was getting really desperate, I didn't understand like how I was gonna, you know, figure out how to get rid of these pains. I went to a holistic coach, and this was after I'd also like tried the pill and everything. I went to a holistic coach, and she specialized in helping women who had painful periods, but also like any other like health problems. And I had a session with her, and she basically taught me like these massages that you could do like throughout the month to just I think help like the blood flow of the body and just like clear blockages. I don't know fully like what the point of the massages were, but they were meant to help with the pains and alleviate pains at that time of the month. So she also did a cupping session for me, and I think that session actually was really helpful in helping ease the pains. Like as the next months went on, I definitely experienced like fewer symptoms like pain wise with my period, and that's definitely something that I think I want to go back and do. That session I did was back in February this year, so it was quite recent, and I do think the effects of it have really shown. So that's also something that we did in the session. And then she also taught me the combo of applying heat and castor oil to your stomach or like the area that you're cramping, and that is something that I have routinely done since I had that session back in February. And I want to say since then my cramping and my period pains have been reduced to such a low level. There'll be some months where I don't want to go as far as saying I feel fine and I'm like I operate as normal, because that's not always really the case, but I can sleep through the night with just applying castor oil and having heat, like the hot water bottle, which is so bizarre because even though I would always used to use a hot water bottle, I would still be up in the night. Like it was comforting, but it didn't get rid of the pain. The pain didn't stop. The pain was still there. It was just a bit of comfort, and I would still be awake all night long. So applying the castor oil has allowed me to actually sleep again, similar with the TENS machine, but there's no side effects to using the castor oil that I've noticed. Now I did post my experience of this on my TikTok not long ago, and some women were sharing experiences of like their hair growth being quicker when using castor oil, or their periods being a bit heavier if you generally have heavier periods when they've used castor oil. So I proceed with caution, and again research and do what you need to do according to like your body. and maybe even go to a holistic coach yourself and explain like your symptoms and how your body deals with the period, and then see if they give you the same advice. But this is something that has really worked well for me, so it's something I want to share and just like let people know that it's an option, because I think the castor oil is something that I'd heard about routinely for years before I actually tried it myself. Castor oil is known for being good for a lot of different things, but cramps, I really didn't think it would make that much of an impact, as much of an impact as it has had on me. And it's crazy because I just kick myself now and I'm like, all this time I suffered and that's all it really took. So let me talk you through the routine of like using the castor oil. So what I do, I have a pump. Oh, I wish I could show it to you now. I actually just got my castor oil online. It has to be 100% organic and cold pressed. That's the one I have, and I pump it onto my lower stomach, just the areas that I get cramping. Also, I put it into my belly button as well, and I massage it in, and then immediately after apply the hot water bottle over the top. And I feel like the heat activates the oil in some way or helps it absorb quicker. And I kid you not, whenever I'm feeling cramps, whenever like I'm on the first day of my period, which is always the worst, when I apply that, and obviously I take painkillers for sure, I can't go a period without taking painkillers, that combination, honestly, I can't even tell you like the excruciating pains that I used to experience, I have really not experienced in the last good few months. And it's very much like inconsistent now. Like I used to consistently get these pains over and over again. I was in so much pain I would black out when I was a teenager. Like it was really bad, and now I'm using these methods and I actually can manage like during even the first day of my period, which used to always be a write-off for me. So that's definitely something I would recommend if you're someone that suffers with painful periods and you haven't tried the castor oil. And make sure you use heat with the castor oil, because I've never used it without applying the heat afterwards, so I don't know if it would have the same effect, and that's how I've been told to use it as well. Something else I want to share, which I really do feel has impacted the pain of my periods as well. So I don't want to tell you guys that there's this one thing that I've done and it's just like eliminated all pain. I think there are a number of things that I have done, and this also links in with the PMDD and what I've done to tackle that as well. I think all of the things combined have really helped get a hold of the pain and just like reduce the symptoms altogether of like all the things I go through when I get my period. Another thing is changing up the pads that I use. So I used to always use just the supermarket pads, like the very plasticky, like I've used Always, I've used whatever other brands that you get, I can't even remember now. Since I started using bamboo pads, I actually got these online as well. I'll try and show a picture on the screen of the pad company that I use. Since I started using these, first of all, they are so much more comfortable. Like the comfort is on another level. So even when I'm out and about, I don't feel like gross and feel like, I can't even describe like the discomfort I feel when I've used like other pads before. But because that's all I ever knew, I just associated periods with being uncomfortable my entire life up until now, because I never really had any other options. But until I started using the bamboo pads and I found those, they're so comfortable to wear, they're so much softer, they don't have a horrible fragrance, and I'm sure that my periods have become less painful because of them in a way as well. When I used to get my period and then as soon as I put a pad on, my period would become very heavy very quickly and quite a lot more painful as soon as I put a pad on. I would notice that pattern, but then I would also just think to myself, well, it's because I've just started my period, like of course it's going to get heavier because you're on the first day, like it's just the way it is. But then I noticed when I changed the pads that I used to these bamboo ones, my period would obviously, like I'd still like get a full flow and I would still be bleeding a lot, but the pain wasn't the same, and the pain level was different. Like I was still in pain, but it wasn't to that level, and the discomfort wasn't also there as much, which also does impact your pain as well. Like when you're uncomfortable on top of being in pain, it's just double whammy. So yeah, when I change my pads, I definitely notice a difference. So I'll definitely look into that as well. If you're a girl that uses pads, I can't say a lot for tampons because I just don't use them. I don't get on with them and they freak me out if I'm going to be honest. Like I have tried to use them before, but I just don't like them. But if you are a girl that wears pads in particular, definitely look into the materials that you are actually using. Like look into bamboo pads, trust me. I really do think that you will find at least a more comfort in using those. Like you'll feel more comfortable, like your skin won't be irritated as much compared to using the other ones. So definitely wanted to raise that as well, to try that if you experience painful periods. Okay guys, I want to move on to the PMDD section of this video now, because this is really what I've wanted to talk about in this video mostly, because since my last video I had actually got a diagnosis for PMDD, which was a huge step for me in terms of actually validating how I feel every month and the fact that I'm not actually a crazy woman and there is something going on inside me that is a little bit out of my control and has been for this whole duration of time that I've just been dealing with it. So I went to the doctor again last October, so it's just over a year ago now. I basically talked about my symptoms, how I was feeling. I talked about the fact that I really do feel like I've got PMDD, but I'm not sure, it could be something else. Because I ain't a doctor, you know, there could be something that I don't know about that actually is wrong with me. So I talked her through my symptoms. She gave me a lot of resources in terms of like what PMDD looks like, and she was very much like, yeah, by the sounds of it, like this is exactly like what you're going through. And she kind of talked me through all the symptoms of PMDD. She matched up how I was feeling to like what the disorder actually is and how it functions. And we just talked about it, but her only option she gave me was going on the pill. She gave me the Yasmin pill to try, and she was just like, see how that goes and hopefully your symptoms will alleviate. I'm not even joking, you guys. When I started taking that pill, my skin reacted so freaking badly to it. There's videos on my YouTube actually where you can see the state of my skin. If you go back to my Niqab makeup tutorial, you will see what the pill did to my skin. It was horrendous. I've never had skin like that, and it just, like, it destroyed my confidence. Like, that's all I could think about is all these like growths happening on my face. And yeah, it didn't even like stop the pain. I'll be honest, I probably didn't take the pill for long enough to give it a chance to do what it was going to do, but the side effects I was having so quickly into taking it, I just knew I had to find another option. I just knew that wasn't the option for me. And after taking it and having that experience and talking to people about it, people have said, yeah, your skin does purge, but it does like go back to normal after. But I'll just be honest, it wasn't something that I was just willing to like stick out. And the pill is always something that I didn't even want to do. Like I was very reluctant to even go down that route anyway. And by that point I got married as well, and I was like, I don't want to, like, this is not what I want. Yeah, and the pill is something that like, it kind of takes over your life in a way. And I don't want to be dramatic because I know like a lot of girls have to take it or they just do and get on with it. But it's one of those things where like every single day you have to remember to take it at the exact time, and then you have to have a break, and you have to like keep tally on like when you've taken it, when you haven't, and it's just a nightmare to deal with, and it was just not something that I wanted to put up with. And I knew there were other options out there for me, so I thought I would rather just keep looking. At this point in time as well, I want to mention that I was going through some really like difficult things in my personal life, and this is actually what triggered me to realize how I was going to like help my PMDD symptoms and help myself not feel so goddamn awful during that time. So when I got my diagnosis with PMDD, I actually went to a therapist beforehand, and she was the one that convinced me to go back to the doctor, even though I'd told the doctor so many times how I was feeling before and how much it was impacting me. She told me to go back, and I was in therapy because of this like difficult stuff I was going through in my personal life, and I was working through it. And when I started like looking back into PMDD, because this is a journey that I've been on for a long time, as a lot of you all know, I found out that apparently a high percentage, I don't want to quote an exact percentage in case I get it wrong, but there is a high percentage of people who experience like childhood trauma or issues growing up that actually end up developing PMDD in their adulthood or when they get their period. And when little things like that started to unravel for me, I started to just look at my environment, the things that I was dealing with, the triggers that were causing my PMD to like literally flare up and be the worst it could possibly be. Like, I'm not even joking to you guys, and I know I think I mentioned this in my previous video, but it got so bad. Like, it's a little bit hard to say out loud actually. I thought I was just gonna come right out and say it, but yeah. I hit low lows, that's all I want to say for now. um Lows that just came out of nowhere. I think that is the thing with PMDD as well. It's like you could be absolutely fine and you could think that like you are handling everything really well and nothing is really affecting you emotionally and you were doing all the right things, and then out of absolute nowhere you hit rock bottom so quickly you don't even realize how you got there, and you're just there now, and that's all you can focus on, and your mind goes to very, very dark places. And it honestly just got so bad, guys. Like, I was a danger to myself at a point, and this was happening routinely. Like, this wasn't even like a one-off thing. I don't really like talking about this, I'll be honest. This is such an uncomfortable topic to talk about, but I feel like it's an important one to talk about because not enough people are. So I just hope that me talking about it, even if it's really awkward for me, I hope it's helpful in some way, at least to some person out there, so you can like get to this place I'm in now a lot quicker than I did and not have to go through all that crap to get to this place. So anyways, yeah, we reached that place, that dark place, many, many times, and I think that's what also forced me to go to the doctor, because I was like, I actually cannot, like, I actually don't know if, like, if I hadn't figured out all the things I like slowly figured out over these last, I want to say, few months to a year, I don't even know if I'd still be here, because that's how dangerous this like issue became. Like, it became scary. But yeah, so I went to the doctor. I got validated that I was experiencing PMDD and it wasn't like me being crazy. And I think what also was really helpful in her actually validating it for me is that because I was going through all this stuff in my personal life, I think it just really helped me like understand that it wasn't in my head, like it was an actual thing I was battling alongside all of this other stuff. Can we? So yeah, it was just this like extra thing I had to tackle, and because I knew now that I had to deal with this extra thing, and it was like it almost became tangible for me. And obviously it's not, because it's still in my head, even though I'm saying that it was no longer in my head. It was still very much in my head. Like, mentally I was going through it. Emotionally, I think the emotional effects were so strong that, and that's not something I ever really considered. I was always in my head and thinking of like mentally what I was dealing with. It took me a really long time to actually acknowledge that by controlling my emotions and learning how to regulate my own emotions, that was going to be the key to like actually unlock how to tackle this properly. Now, I would just want to preface, like, before going into like all the stuff I've done, I'm not cured. Like, I still go through it, but I think I go through it now on a much like lower scale. Like, I can thankfully say it's been, this is like a good thing, because I don't actually remember the last time I felt like I wanted to you know? So, I mean, the symptoms have lowered. Doesn't mean that the symptoms don't still exist and I don't still struggle, because I do. But I'm working through it and I understand my body a lot more now. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of preface that, like, I'm not saying I'm here to like cure all your problems, and I know exactly the step-by-step process on how you're going to eradicate your PMDD and painful periods just by watching this video. I'm just talking through my experiences and the little things that have helped like bring what was up here down to like this level, this like manageable, breathable level where I'm not like actually drowning anymore. A big part of it, which is something that I really don't hear a lot of people talking about, is your external environment and your surroundings and the things that trigger you within your surroundings. I think for a very long time I was immersed in so much dysfunction, so much toxicity, which was already unhealthy in itself, don't get me wrong. Like, that was already a lot to deal with and that was a lot to manage. But then to have to deal with that when your hormones are out of sync and when you are in that really vulnerable place in the month, like, there is something that happens to your body internally in your luteal phase as someone that suffers from PMDD, and I think it's like your progesterone levels either increase really rapidly or decrease really rapidly. I can't remember which one, but there is a hormone drop or increase that is so drastic that that's what causes these like additional symptoms, that you get majorly anxious, majorly depressive, majorly irritable. And when I say majorly, I mean major levels. Like, it's you become inconsolable. You feel like your world is crashing down. You feel like it is the end of the world in those moments. And when you are in the thick of it, there is really nothing that can bring you to your senses. Like, you're not going to be able to see what's in front of you. But because I've done this work and because I've understood like what my triggers are, and the fact that I was in such a dysfunctional environment, and because I was dealing with so much like toxicity, when it came to that time, I absolutely couldn't handle it, and it was like so triggering for me. And I say this also understanding that it's not easy to just change up your environment and your situation and who's in your close circle immediately. It's really not easy to change all these things, but at least if you're aware of it, hopefully it will help that process of beginning to manage it. Because I think awareness was the first thing that really helped me get a hold of understanding, okay, I'm going through something right now. Like, this isn't just me being irrational, acting out, or something that I am actually in control of. I don't have that much control over it, but I'm aware of it, which then kind of brings me into the realm of being a little bit in control, or being able to rein it in a little bit at least. So the awareness is the first step. If you're aware of that you're struggling with something, if you're aware that your symptoms are not normal, if you're aware that there is something more going on within your body that is making you behave in a certain way or make you feel certain things and have certain thoughts, that awareness is the first step. But you also should have your awareness validated by someone. A doctor, not just anyone. You really need to go to a doctor and try and get a diagnosis, or get them to tell you like, yeah, I'm 99% sure this is what you're dealing with, because only then will you acknowledge, like, okay, this is something that is happening to me, and this is something that like I can make steps towards figuring out how I'm going to move past it or through it. The next step is understanding your triggers, because once you are aware of what you're going through, you've had that validated, then you can look at, okay, well, there are things triggering this and making it a lot worse than it has to be. Now, this might be in certain circumstances. I'm not going to speak for everyone. I'm only speaking from my experience. There might be people that have the most perfect environment, everyone's so supportive and loving and caring all of the time, and you have no one triggering you, or no negativity or no toxicity around you, there's no dysfunction, and you still feel like that. That might be the case. But I'm just speaking from experience and knowing that I noticed when I was most triggered was when I wasn't really allowed to just do what I needed to do myself. Like, I felt like I wasn't in control of my space, my energy, or my time. And during that time where I needed to be on my own and I needed to like be able to take a step back and process my emotions, I needed to not have people around me triggering me left, right and center, and just being so immersed in that dysfunction of other people, because I physically couldn't control those things. I became so much worse. Like, the symptoms were so much more heightened. So I'm just saying, if you're someone that is in a similar situation and you feel like you're trapped in this environment where it is already very unhealthy on a good day, but then you know that you suffer from PMDD, that could also be what's making it worse. And that could be the reason that you're feeling all these things to a much higher degree than you would if you weren't in that environment. So it's very, very important to figure out what your triggers are, like what is actually making it worse. I'm not saying that you're going to eradicate your symptoms and everything's just going to be perfect, but what is worsening your symptoms? What is sending you down that deep, dark hole even further than you need to go? Understanding the triggers helps. And that just comes with observing your environment and observing your body and yourself and how you react to things and how you feel about things. Now, don't get me wrong, I have a lot of irrational emotions or anger towards things. Like, I've also, through doing this exercise, I've noticed that during this period of time, there will be completely normal things that normally wouldn't anger me to another level, just because it's that period of time now, and just because my hormones are at a different level, and there are things and elements of this that are not in your control unless you are balancing your hormones yourself, which is a whole other story and something I haven't figured out myself, so we're not going to discuss that in this video. But your triggers can make things worse, but I'm not also going to deny there are things that you will notice that make you so much more irritable, angry, annoyed at, and just feel all these feelings that you wouldn't normally feel if it was a different week in the month, for example. So bear those things in mind. That's also like just comes down to the self-awareness and observing your body, observing your emotions, and become more in tune with your body and how you are feeling at different moments in time. Keep a journal, log these things, track what emotions you feel every single day. This is also what the doctors tell you to do when you do go to them and explain that you feel like you have got PMDD. They ask you to track your emotions. They actually give you like an emotion tracker. So each day you log like how you felt. You need to be doing that to establish like what is going on in your body and when you are feeling certain things, because when you start doing all these things, you then again build up more awareness, and it helps you realize, okay, this is temporary. Like, I feel like this now, but I'm not going to feel like this forever. And you know how much of a game changer that is? Because when you go from being in the thick of it suddenly and you don't even know how you ended up there, and you go from this person who is so unaware of what's going on in their body, so unaware of like how these things are happening to them, so unaware what's triggering them, how things are just making them react and feel a certain way, and you're just so in your own skin and you're so consumed by all your emotions and how you're feeling and the pain, and you're just so consumed by the present moment. You're so out of touch with the bigger picture of what's actually going on in your body, because you can't even find your way out of the thick of darkness. Like, you can't see a single shed of light. When you go from being that person to being the person that's like, I'm observant of my body, I've got that as a good routine now, I check my emotion, I tell myself in my head, oh, this is really annoying me. Is this something that would normally trigger and annoy me, or am I going through something right now? Let me check my calendar. Where am I at in my cycle right now? Am I in my luteal phase? These are all the things you need to start doing if you're someone that has PMDD or you suffer with these really extreme symptoms. You need to start cycle tracking. So that's also the next point. Sorry, I'm jumping all over the place here, but I haven't really like structured this video in a way because I just did want to make sure I just get all my information how I feel out there. And it is experience based. Like, this isn't me telling you that do these steps and it's going to fix you, but I also do want to share all these steps in case it does fix you. So cycle tracking has also changed the game for me to another level. I now track exactly what phase of my cycle I'm in all throughout the month, and I do it every single month. I know when my follicular phase is, I know obviously when I'm bleeding, which is always usually the only thing we ever track. I also know when When I'm ovulating, I try to know roundabout, and I also know when my luteal phase has approached. Now my luteal phase is much longer than I feel like it should be, but that's why it's even more important for me to know, because 2 weeks out of the month essentially I'm in my luteal phase, which is really depressing. But at least I know in my calendar it will tell me you are entering your luteal phase at this moment in time, which then sends a signal to my brain that tells me any time that I'm irritated, angry, upset, overly emotional, I'm feeling like you get to a point where your emotions are bubbling up so much inside you, you feel like you're gonna burst. But when you know that you're in that period of time, you've already like checked yourself and put yourself in that headspace, you are preempting those emotions and those feelings coming up, which means you are prepared to feel those things. And when you're prepared to feel something, you are able to catch it and you're able to rationalize yourself a little bit better. Now, don't get me wrong, there's only so much you can rationalize your own emotions. I mean, emotions are emotions. You're going to feel things, like I still get angry, but they don't have as much long-term effect on me anymore. Like, I feel like I can channel that energy in that moment, release those emotions, and then I feel like I can recover a lot better from them because I already saw it coming. So I almost allow myself to feel like that temporarily and let the emotion pass. Because let me tell you one thing as well. Your emotions are meant to pass through you. They're not meant to come and stay with you. And this is how like depression and like prolonged anxiety and all these things happen, is when you have an emotion that comes into you and then you let it stay there and you stick with it and you hold on to it. When you are aware that you suffer from something like PMDD and you are aware that these things are going to happen to you at some point in the month, you become more detached from your emotions because you recognize that this is something that's going to pass through you. You actually have already acknowledged that. So when you come to these moments where you're feeling really enraged and angry and upset or just like heavily emotional, you already understand in your subconscious at least that this is going to pass through you. This isn't something that's going to stay. And I think that's such a key turning point in your mindset towards these things, is when you recognize this is something that's going to pass through you and you have to just let it. It's not something that you're in control of, that you can actually physically stop happening. Your emotions are going to happen and you have to just let it happen, but know that it's going to come and go. And when you get to that point where you can recognize it's going to come and leave, then you get to a place where you can recover a lot quicker from those outbursts and from those just like intense emotional feelings. You won't feel like super drained and like it won't like drag you down for days and days on end, because that's what it can do. If you are in that state of mind where you don't understand it and you're confused and you're just feeling all these emotions and you're getting wrapped up in them, it can leave you feeling like that for 2 weeks straight, non-stop, and that's a dangerous place to be in. That's a long time to be feeling like that low of a low, and that's why you do end up, you know, having like ideations of wanting to do like dangerous things. So this step of understanding your emotions and being in tune with the fact that this is going to happen and being prepared for it and knowing, okay, I've entered the luteal phase now and I am expecting to feel these feelings. Then when you do feel those feelings, you're like, I know what it is. I know why I'm feeling this way. I know I'm being a bit irrational, because this isn't usually how I would feel about this exact same situation if you place me in a different month of a different week of the month. So I'm just gonna breathe it out. Maybe I'll shout about it. Maybe I'll journal about it. But I'm not going to let these feelings consume me, because I know it's passing, and it passes every single time. You know, if you're someone that suffers with this, you know as soon as your period hits, it's like nothing ever happened. You can't even imagine yourself feeling those feelings again. You can't even like, it vanishes. All the emotions, all the intensity, it vanishes entirely, and you don't even recognize who you were, and you don't even understand how you got to that point. It's like a flip of a switch. It's crazy. But even still, when that happens to you, but you don't know what you're dealing with, and you don't know it's PMDD, and you don't know it's connected to your period, and you don't know there's a luteal phase and that's the reason, and it's your hormones. If you don't know all these things, even though you'll go through that cycle, I went through this cycle for years and years and years, being okay, being really not okay, being okay, being really not okay. But what happens is when you're really not okay and then you become okay again, all that happens is when you're okay again, you're just recovering from being not okay, and you spend so much time recovering, and by the time you get to the end of recovering, you're back in the not okay cycle. So it just feels like this horrible, torturous cycle of like never really actually being okay. And then you start to think that that's your personality. You start to think that's who you are as an individual, and you start to think you're just this really angry, irritable, miserable person to be around. And you start to just like take that on as your identity. You don't acknowledge that this is something separate to you. This is something that you're experiencing and dealing with and struggling with. So again, that's why it's so important to have that awareness, and that's the difference between having the awareness and not. You don't let it consume you when you're aware of it, and you don't let it become your personality. Like, I know now I'm not an angry person. That's not me. And for years and years and years, I was angry. Like, that was me. Like, if you'd sum me up, you would sum me up as being angry. And now I know that is absolutely not me. I'm not an angry girl. I'm not really hot-headed, realistically. Like, I'm actually a very calm, you know, like introspective person, and maybe this process has changed. Maybe I was that angry person, and I was actually, because I did make it my personality, because I thought it was my identity. I thought that's just the way I was. But going through all this work, I've realised, no, that's not who I am, and I've actually changed now. And that wasn't the real me, that was just my reaction to what was going on internally. Also, if you are someone that works and you're not in school or education, or even if you are in school or education, I would make sure people around you are aware. Like, as soon as you've got the doctor telling you, like, yeah, I think you've got this, and you're being diagnosed with PMDD, I would really make an effort to make sure people around you are aware, because people can't help if they don't know. And this is something that I also learned, but also I struggled because of the taboo surrounding periods. Like, I couldn't talk about these things to begin with, never mind talking about periods on top of mental health. Like, these two topics that have been so taboo for such a long time, talking about your period, talking about mental health, you want to combine them both now and tell me I have to talk about them openly and publicly and with everyone I know? But the thing is, yeah, if you don't talk about these things, people don't understand. People think you are a type of way. People will assume things. People will make their own judgments about your situation and what you're going through, and won't understand the full picture, which will lead you down a difficult path anyway. Like, you're gonna deal with difficulty no matter what you do, because when you're dealing with something like PMDD, it kind of does take over your life if you let it, and if you're not aware of it. And it's something that really took over my life for a long time. I became PMDD. Like, all the symptoms that I experienced, that became almost my personality. So tell people around you what you're going through. And I know it's difficult, I know it's uncomfortable. You don't have to tell the whole world and broadcast it like I'm doing right now, but what you can do is you can tell a best friend, as someone that you're close with in your family. Tell at least one person what you're going through and what you're experiencing, so you have a little bit of support. You have someone that gets it, and they don't even have to get it, they just have to know that it's a thing, know that you're working through something. And I really do think it's so much easier dealing with something when you know there's like people that are understanding of you, and even maybe a bit like forgiving of you for like behaving the way you do in those moments, because you aren't your best self and you really are in a very, very dark place. So you are going to act out of anger and just be very emotional, and you need to have people around you that understand that's like coming from a different place, that's coming from you struggling, and that's not coming from you trying to hurt others and being deliberately disruptive, if that makes sense. So it really does help to explain that to people, but I also do recognize that some people can't be told because they don't want to hear about mental health and they don't want to hear about periods. Like, there will be people maybe in your family or your circle that will shame you for talking about these things as well. So I'd also just be like cautious of that, because I don't want you to end up opening up and then feeling even worse about what you're going through. So be selective in who you choose to speak to about it, at least to begin with, while you're figuring things out. But I would really like to think that hopefully if you like go through the steps that I've discussed in the video, you will get to a place like I have where you're very much more in tune with your own body. You understand your body so much more. You're able to actually like put into words what your body goes through a little bit better. Like even when that time's coming up, like say I'm feeling really irritable more than usual, I can communicate that now and be like, look, I'm really not in a good place right now and I'm a little bit emotionally unstable. Like I can come out and say that because I know that that's how I'm feeling, and I've just become more aware and observant of my body, that I can just recognize when I'm feeling like that. And you can communicate that to people close to you so that they know not to take these personally. They know when you're struggling. And it also helps you as well, because as soon as you like said something like that out loud, you know that you can check yourself, and you feel a bit more confident to like be in control of like your emotions a lot of the time as well. And you can control your emotions. Well, you can learn to process your emotions. I think that's like the main thing I've learned, is being able to process and regulate my emotions. It's really hard to do that when you're around dysfunction and toxicity. It's really hard to regulate emotions in an unregulated environment. So I really have had to choose peace, and I've really had to cultivate an environment around me and be very, very selective with who I allow in my presence, to ensure that I don't enter really dark places. And like, you've got to take care of yourself at the end of the day. Nobody else is really going to do that for you. And if you are someone that really suffers something as scary and as dangerous as this, you have to take those like sometimes drastic actions to make sure you're not put in a position where you're going to end up in this really terribly emotionally distressed state as a result of someone else's words or actions towards you, which, whether they were intentional or not, I really don't care. If someone is having that level of effect on you negatively when you already suffer from something like this, the only option that you really have is to remove those people from your life, no matter who they are. Now, I'm just speaking from personal experience and knowing how dangerous it can get when you don't take care of your own environment and when you don't look out for yourself, and make sure that you are cultivating that safe space for yourself, especially during that time. But yeah, there's a lot I've gone through in this video, guys, so I really hope that's helpful. I've been meaning to talk to you guys about this for such a long time, but if you've experienced it, you'll know it's not a very easy thing to talk about. Like, people will brand you as crazy, you brand yourself as crazy, and it's just an uncomfortable, awkward thing. There is also a stigma attached. Like, you can't get away from the fact that it is still a taboo topic, which also doesn't make it any easier to discuss. But I really, really hope this video helped at least one person listening, and maybe it helps one person identify the fact that they have PMDD, learn about what it is so they can support someone else in their life that's going through it. Like, it's no joke, and I feel so disheartened that something like this isn't even that widely known about, because it is life destroying, like crazily. Like, it takes over your life. It's such a painful thing to live with, and it can be made so much worse if you obviously don't know that it even exists. So I really, really hope at least it's just spreaded awareness and made more people aware of the fact that this thing exists. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. If you made it to the end of this video, let me know if you have any tips to share for any fellow girls that suffer from painful periods or from PMDD, if there's anything I didn't mention. Obviously, I'm not this all-knowing person that has all the answers for you. I'm very much kind of managing this, dealing with it and learning about it as I'm going along, and there's a lot I've learned along the way, but I still have a journey to go with my own symptoms and experience. So please do share your experiences down below, any tips that you have, any advice that you have to share. I'm sure any of the girlies in the community that experience the same thing will also really appreciate that. And with that being said, guys, I will catch you in the next video. Bye, guys!